Let me know if the presentation is visible.
Yes, sir. It's
All
done.
right. All right. All right. Okay. In my warm wishes to CIPET for conducting this series of seminars. I think this is second in series because last time when I was involved, it was done by CIPET Lucknow. So I think this is a great initiative undertaken by Government of India to create awareness on this particular subject, which is taking a lot of traction now. And we know with all this marine littering becoming a global issue, it makes all the more sense to have people like you be aware of the subject, and perhaps we can generate more knowledge to solve this problem for now and for future. So with that, perhaps I'll now kickstart my presentation. This is basically the agenda which I'll be covering. Dr. Ashwini, I had circulated my slides yesterday. Have you been able to share with all, or
Yes,
you
sir.
can?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. Okay, no, that works because sometimes this uncertainty with the technology can create a problem. So I thought, let me share that within advance. Anyhow, good that it has been shared. So coming back to the agenda, I'll be briefly introducing the company which I represent, which is Tomra Systems ASA. Then a slide.
So you are not audible.
Sir, you are not audible.
Is it audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You can hear me now, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. I'll again start with this agenda slide. I'll be covering the brief introduction about my company, Tomra System, which is a Norwegian multinational company. Then quickly touching upon a concept of extended producer responsibility, EPR. The reason for touching this topic is because this sets the context for the key agenda for today's discussion, which is deposit refund system. Here I put the acronym DRS. So DRS is nothing but deposit refund system. Then how it has proliferated across the world, like a big, I would say, forest fire. Then what goes into implementation of the DRS, some essential elements which makes DRS a successful EPR tool, and last but not the least, how it makes a business case and not just purely an environmental initiative to take it forward. Quite a few slides I may not be able to cover in the interest of time, but perhaps they are self-descriptive, and I can always be approached at a later stage if you need any clarification on those slides. So with that, let me go forward with my presentation, introduction of Tomra. These are the promoters of Tomra, Tori and Peter Planke. They are Norwegian by origin. Tomra was founded in 1972, so we are nearly 50-year-old organization. And the whole ideology of Tomra at that point of time stemmed from the fact that a small time brewer in a city of Asker near Oslo was facing a lot of problem with reference to the refillable bottles, which is the glass bottle on which the beer was served. So he was discussing over the beer with Tori and Peter Planke that I am facing a lot of problem with incoming supplies. So what is that I can do, because it is affecting my sales? So then they came up with the idea that why don't we look at the option wherein these bottles can be collected back from the consumer, washed, and then can be reused. So initially they decided to, go to home and collect the bottles and, bring it back, wash it and reuse it. But that resulted into a lot of breakages, which was not making an economic sense. Then they thought, let us look at inventing a machine which can be placed at strategic location, which is sophisticated enough to reduce the breakages of glasses, and at the same time can serve the purpose of collecting the bottle for this brewer. And that's how where this whole idea of reverse vending machine was born. So I would say that Tomra was the company who invented with this machine, which is known as reverse vending machine. We have quite a few machines in India, but none of them are from Tomra as yet, because we are still exploring the market. And also, you know that in a country like India, it is the affordability which is given a more importance as opposed to functionality and the technology. But I think things are changing. So India is eventually going to become a big market for Tomra, the way things are changing. So that's how the birth of first reverse vending machine was there. And you can see at the background, this was the first machine which was developed by Tomra. And today, Tomra is the largest manufacturer of the machine in the world, and above all, most technologically advanced machine. And it's not just have limited its scope to collection of the machine bottles. It brings in a lot of functionalities which are smart enough to give much more value proposition than mere collection. It enables data collection, data analysis, real-time monitoring of what is being put to the machine and how much has been put to the market. So there are a lot of functionalities. So you can imagine in over 50 years how much a machine technological development must have gone through. So we are the market leader with close to 70% of market share in the world. So today, Tomra is a market leader in terms of sensor-based solutions, because this reverse vending technology is also based on the principle of optical sorting, wherein near infrared technology basically, I would say, recognize the material which needs to be accepted and which needs to be rejected. So using that as our background, in early 2001, we expanded our focus area beyond the reverse vending machine. We ventured into sorting business also, again, based on the same technology, wherein this near infrared technology is used to sort the material on account of size, shape, color, texture, and deformity. So with that addition to our portfolio, now Tomra is a market leader in terms of sensor-based solutions to deliver optimal resource productivity across the world. So this is where our division lies in terms of business. We have Tomra Collection Solution, which was the original thought process of Tomra, wherein we have a reverse vending solution, wherein we collect the beverage containers through our reverse vending machine. And when I say beverage containers, I mean PET bottle, glass bottle, liquid paper board, which is also known as Tetra Pak, and above all, HDP and your metal cans also. So now this reverse vending solutions can recognize these kind of beverage containers and can facilitate clean collection. Then the sorting business has two sub-verticals, Tomra Recycling Mining and Tomra Food. Tomra Recycling Mining basically division uses the sorting technology, wherein the ore which get extracted from the mine can be sorted for higher efficiency, so that the productivity can be enhanced. And in terms of recycling, this sorter has application in what we call as material recovery facilities, which is an upstream facility before the material goes for the recycling, incineration, or landfilling. So mixed dry waste, which comes in as an input, need not to be segregated at home. It can be sorted by this technology into various fractions, be it paper, glass, metal, leather, and within plastic also, it can sort the material into all 7 categories of interest. So that's where this is becoming a very big application across the world. I think we have close to 5,000 machines installed only for waste sorting across the world, with largest facility in Norway, in Stavanger, wherein they are treating close to 1,000 metric tons on a daily basis. And the biggest advantage of this sorting application is it ensures the consistency of the quality, which apparently is a very big challenge when we go for manual sorting of the waste, because the whole economics of recycler depends on the input feedstock. And that's where this technology brings in the real value. In addition to the kind of tonnages it can deal, because typically with manual sorting, you can go for 20 ton, 30 ton, or at max 50 tons. And that too also with, human involvement up to 200 or 500 people, which also has its pros and cons. But that's where it brings in the value. And country like India, of course, we do understand that we have a labor intensive market. So 100% automation may not be, I would say, a sustainable solution. So we have looked at semi-automatic, wherein a portion of waste sorting happens through manual, which is of a low value. However, for the high value item, which has a lot of implication on the recycling downstream, the sorting technology provided by Tomra can bring in a lot of value. So there is one sorting plant installed in Indore by NEPRA, and the Indore has always been the top performer from under Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. So they have a material recovery facility where the Tomra technology has been installed. And then we also have one more division, Tomra Food, again using the same principle, wherein the food produced from the agriculture land can be sorted before it goes to the processor. So the French fries which are served by McDonald's, the 60% of the potatoes which goes into French fries making across the world come through Tomra technology only. So that is the scale of our technology penetration across the globe. This is the revenue of 2020, close to 9.9 billion Norwegian kroner, and if I translate into USD, it's close to 1 to 1.2 billion dollar, and we have a market cap of close to $10 billion. Now, this is an important slide, which perhaps will be the context setting for today's discussion. What you see on your left side, I'm sure many of you must have come across. This is a mass balance of packaging, plastic packaging perhaps, which was developed by Ellen MacArthur Foundation way back in 2015. I think very recently also they have come up with the revised mass balance, and situation is no different from what you see here. Just to highlight that things have not changed dramatically in last 5 years, but despite all hue and cry. But I think we are heading for an alarming stage wherein action is required at a much faster rate than ever expected. So if I use this mass balance, close to 78 million tons of plastic packaging was put to the market. Now this is a global scale. What you see here is of the total amount which was put to the market, only 14% went back for the recycling, and remaining 86% either went for the incineration or landfilling, or perhaps leaked to the environment, be it on the land or maybe some water bodies and eventually marine littering. So that is the amount of leakage into the environment. Only 14% goes for the recycling, and within 14%, 4% actually goes into the process loss, 8% goes into downcycling, and mere 2% only goes into the closed loop recycling. And closed loop recycling have a different interpretation across the world, but what is Tomra's understanding is something which goes either for the same application or it goes for a higher application. So we call that as a closed loop recycling. So out of 78 million ton, only 2% is actually going back to a closed loop recycling. So this is a dire situation, no different from last 5 years. Presently also is a problem. And that's where Tomra CEO, ex-CEO rather now, Stefan Ranstad, in 2019, made a global commitment at World Economic Forum in Davos that Tomra, through its own technological solution, through its network, through the various stakeholders across the value chain, will facilitate this change in mass balance. When I say change, change means increasing the recycling from current 14% to 40%, and the closed loop percentage we would like to increase from 2% to 30%. Now, as I mentioned, that Tomra alone cannot do it. We require support of stakeholders across the value chain. We need the support from the policymakers. We need to engage with think tanks. We need to engage with the institution, educational institution, technological institution for this transition. So that is something which drives the purpose for Tomra, and not just only as a technology provider, but perhaps working at an ecosystem level. And this is where the role of my department, which is known as governmental affair, comes in. We are not the sales department or a marketing department. We are not into any kind of profit loss statement for the organization, but more as a think tank for the organization, wherein we are a set of 22 people spread across 5 continents, wherein we engage with governments, policymakers in the geographies of our area. And then we try and explain them what are the best practices which needs to be implemented so that eventually this commitment which Tomra CEO has given can be met, not only for the Tomra, but for the world at large. Now, what you see here is 1, 2, 3, 4 is basically the areas wherein the Tomra technology do exist, wherein we can facilitate the minimization of leakage to the environment, or perhaps increasing the recycling, and more specifically, the closed loop recycling. Again, I would like to give the disclaimer, this is not a sales pitch for our technology. We are anyways the market leader, but now the expectation for Tomra from us is more about dissemination of right kind of policies and practices which can deliver a closed loop or the circular economy in some sense. Quickly touching on the EPR, I'm assuming many of you know that what the concept of EPR is, extended producer responsibility. But for those who have less idea on this, this is an environmental policy tool, and which is into place for last, I would say, 4 to 5 decades. It started way back in 1970, more specifically with the electronic sector, and then into chemical, and now it is one of the biggest environmental policy application for packaging. Although a formal definition was given up in 1990 by Professor Thomas Lindquist from Lund University in Sweden. Fortunately, I happened to do my master's course from there, and he was my master thesis professor, so I had a chance to understand this subject slightly more in detail with him. So in a very simplistic manner, this is a concept which says that the responsibility of producer goes beyond putting the product into the market or packaging into the market. They should be held responsible for end of life application of the product or packaging as well, which means that the responsibility of ensuring that product or packaging do not have any kind of environmental impact should also lies with the product or the manufacturer or the producer, and not just simply putting to the market. And this could be a responsibility either in the form of operational responsibility, financial responsibility, or technological responsibility. This whole idea stems from the fact that, the packaging specifically is becoming complicated day by day, and in many cases it is the packaging which attracts more than the product. But this complicated packaging is creating a big problem for the municipalities because they don't really know how to manage with plastic, which takes years together to decompose. So it occupies the landfill space for eternity. So increasingly, it is becoming a challenge for the municipalities to get land for the landfills. Again, under the premise of not in my backyard principle. Plus, disposal also is becoming complicated, and eventually it is the taxpayer money which is going into managing of these products or packaging, which is being put by this producer. So the whole idea is to pass on the responsibility to the producers, and that's where this EPR has picked up a lot of traction. I'm sure many of you would know that Government of India has come up with their draft notification of EPR very recently for plastic packaging, and I think a week back for tires. So this is an increasingly interest area of subject for the government, because they want the producers to take the responsibility and not left for the municipalities and others to deal with this burden. So globally, there are various models through which the EPR is implemented, but the most common ones are the curbside collection system or the green dot system. This is more common in the case of European context, wherein the producers are largely taking the responsibility of financing the system, but there is an independent agency or the municipality who does the entire collection of the material and management of the material for the end of life, and the bill is passed on to the producer. So that was, I would say, the most prominent one. Then you have environmental taxes, then you have product standards, packaging standard, and then you have tools like deposit return system, specifically focusing on the beverage containers. So various tools have got a different level of success. If I talk about Tomra technology, we are available at all the spectrums of the products or the tools which are implemented under deposit. But today's discussion, I would rather limit to deposit return system. And the reason why I've chosen this particular EPR tool, because of its performance deliverable. When I say performance deliverable, I would rather be very specific to the collection rate, because in major part of the world, it is the collection of the waste which is one of the biggest or the teething problem. The subsequent downstream, I would say, value chain is complicated, but not as complicated as the collection itself. And India is a classical case for it, wherein the collection is the biggest challenge. And even if it is collected, the entire value chain is not efficient, both in terms of quantity as well as quality. And that's where tools like deposit refund system brings in immense value. Now here I'm talking about the beverage container, because this is where the biggest application of deposit return system is there. But it is now expanding to other domains also, be it batteries, even for tires, it is being explored. And there are many more products where it is being explored. But for beverage, the performance deliverables are well established, and not only in few geographies, but in almost all geographies where it is implemented. And to give a number, to give some sense to that, these systems, if properly designed or implemented, can easily give you a collection rate of close to 90% against what is being put to the market. To give more reference, for example, if there are 100,000 PET bottles put to the market, so 90,000 of PET bottles can be collected through this kind of system if properly implemented. In case of Germany, it is 98.5%. So again, this all depends on what is the robustness of the system design and how much stakeholders are involved in designing can have the implication. But 90% is something which is really good. And I will show you how in terms of performance, it can be dramatically different from other tools under EPR. So now getting into the core subject, which is EPR or DRS. So deposit refund system. I don't know the demographic profile of all the participants today, but I'm sure many of you would know in late 80s or early 90s, we already had an informal deposit refund system for the refillable beverage containers. Especially when I say refillable, I mean mostly the glass bottles. When Coke, Pepsi, Thumbs Up and all used to come in glass bottles. So we had an informal setup wherein when we used to buy a crate of bottles from the dealer, be it retailer or wholesaler, he used to keep a deposit amount which was reimbursed to us when we bring back the bottles. So that kind of system already existed in India. It's just that in early 90s and late 90s, PET bottle completely replaced the glass bottle packaging, and that's where this system just vanished. So essentially, this is the same system wherein you pay a deposit at the time of purchase. And once you return back your container, you get back your deposit. And this deposit is absolutely refundable. It should not be seen as any kind of tax. Well, yes, your money is stuck for the period till you return. And this money which gets stuck can be interpreted in a manner that if you choose to litter it, if you choose to throw it away, then you end up losing your deposit, which can also be interpreted in a manner that it is an outcome of polluter pay principle. So if you don't want to lose your deposit, please return it in a formal collection network and get back your deposit. So by no mean it should be interpreted with any kind of tax or increase in the cost. Well, momentarily, yes. On a time scale, yes. But if you return back, you get back your money. So its whole thought process behind this system is that you are consuming the product and leasing the packaging. So once you have consumed the product, give back the packaging and get back your deposit. So that is what is a fundamental premise of deposit refund system. As I mentioned, the most successful application is for the beverage containers. And I'll come to that why beverage container has been chosen as an area of focus. And the current systems which are being implemented in almost 40 geographies, they are covering the PET, glass, metal, Tetra Pak, and have also been extended to HDP packaging also, but mostly for the beverage containers and not for other application, because the whole idea of deposit system has been extended to the fact that this facilitates a clean collection of the material, because this is a kind of a separate collection method wherein these materials have not come in contact with any other thing which is non-food grade. So the probability of it getting contaminated by other source is very low. Therefore, it is known as clean collection method. And as a matter of global food standards, no government or the policymakers would allow any packaging for food grade wherein earlier packaging was used for non-food grade application. So that's where as long as the material has been used for beverage packaging in the earlier life, then this material does qualify to be used again for remanufacturing the same container. And that's what is known as bottle to bottle recycling, which is coming up big way across the globe. And deposit refund system is the something which can create the feedstock which is required to facilitate this bottle to bottle recycling. Now, why deposit system? This is something very important for you all to understand. What you see on your left is the return rate specifically for the PET bottles, which are used for beverage applications. So you can see the average collection rate, and this is the figure I've taken from the European Union. So average return rate from the deposit is 86% against what is being put to the market. Door-to-door collection is 54%, and the bring back system, the igloo system, what is common in Sweden and all, the collection rate is 43%. So this is where the striking performance difference exists between various collection methods. So there is no question about the sanctity of deposit refund system in terms of performance delivery, and that's the reason why it is picking up very fast globally. The second point, which I just now mentioned in my previous slide, this is the method being separate collection in fundamental design. Therefore, the quality of material which gets collected is by far ahead compared to any other system, where commingling is a big problem, wherein the material quality gets contaminated, gets compromised, which itself further compromise the downstream recycling of the material. Yes, there are a lot of technological interventions which are being developed where the cleaning and everything is possible. But if you look at full carbon footprint across the value chain, the kind of effort which you put in terms of water, energy in cleaning those material eventually takes away the overall environmental benefit of such system. So if something is recyclable, then why to contaminate in first place? Keep it separate and then recycle to the maximum amount. So looking from that philosophy, this clean collection is vital from a DRS point of view. Then, of course, the other aspect, what you see here, this is a study undertaken by Ocean Conservancy, wherein they collected the litter samples from marine environment across the globe. And what you can see here is the top 10 items which were part of marine litter. And of those top 10, 5 of them are something which can be directly or indirectly attributable to the beverage containers, which amounts to close to 31.5% in terms of volume and 87% in terms of weight, is something which comes from beverage in the form of marine litter. And for this reason, I was mentioning that beverage container is something which is a big problem at a global scale. And this concept of deposit refund system has a widespread application on collecting these beverage containers, or perhaps avoiding these containers or the part of these containers eventually reaching to the marine environment. So that's how the background why beverage container has seen DRS application in a big manner. And there are many more reasons, but in the interest of time, these are the three key points which sets the context why DRS system should be considered in resolving the problem of beverage containers. DRS deployment. This is the graph which shows the implementation of DRS across the world. What you see in the blue, where the deposit systems have already been implemented, up and running. What you see in green is basically where the political decision has been taken, and currently the systems are under design and implementation. And the remaining, of course, the barren shows wherein there is no discussion or things have not moved as we would have expected. So if you see here that Australia nearly as a continent is under deposit, by 2023, Victoria, which is the last province where the DRS will be implemented. By 2030, entire Europe will be deposit continent. In US, I think 10 states have already implemented. Canada is also nearly 60% under deposit. In Asia, South Korea has taken a decision to implement deposit system, but in their case, they are starting with single-use cups because they have a littering problem of close to 10 billion single-use cups every year, especially for the coffee purposes. Then Singapore has also taken a call to implement the deposit system for beverage containers by 2023. In Africa, Mauritius has taken a call. And I'm in a very advanced discussion with government of South Africa to roll out in South Africa as one largest country in Africa to kickstart the deposit. India discussions are on. Fortunately, in the latest EPR notification, government has given deposit system as a reference tool for implementing the EPR. Although you know that in India, waste management is a state subject, so there is only much what the federal government can do. But we are hopeful that eventually deposit would also become a reality in India. Of course, how it will work in India would be slightly different from the developed world because we have a big informal sector here. So we need to integrate them in the design of the DRS, and that's where I'm working with quite a few experts in this domain and see what kind of model can be developed for India. Excuse me. So what you see in the bracket along with the country name is the year when it was implemented, or rather it was rolled out for public access. That's what is indicated there. I think the first deposit was implemented in US in 1970, somewhere around 70, yeah. And then next was the British Columbia. So you can see how date back this system is there already in place. Europe is again front-ending the DRS implementation, and there is a reason for this. I'm not sure how many of you are aware that there is something known as Single-Use Plastic Directive, which came into being last year. Under that directive, European Union has kept formidable targets for its member states to achieve 77% collection rate for beverage bottles by 2025 and 90% collection rate by 2029. And that's not enough. They have also gone to an extent that the beverage bottles, especially talking about plastic beverage bottles, they want the recycled content of 25% by 2025 and 30% by 2030. Now, these are definitely formidable targets at the continent level, but What they have also understood that there has to be some kind of prescription to the member state that how they should achieve, and that's where they have given reference to the deposit refund system as a tool which the member states can consider in fulfilling these targets. Because in EU you have a subsidiarity principle wherein European Union can only give the targets, but it is left for the states to decide what kind of policy tool they want to use in fulfilling the targets at pan EU level. So that's where in terms of EU's recommendation, DRS does appear in single-use plastic directive. And you can imagine if a supranational body like European Union is recommending, then obviously there will be a merit in such system. And this merit is purely derived from actual performance deliverables of DRS across the world. This is just to give you an idea that, deposit refund system is basically an ecosystem level solution. It's not just by installing machines and fixing a deposit. You have to put the entire ecosystem wherein people are made aware, wherein you have to set up the reverse logistics system. Then you need to have a processing facility which will be dealing with this huge influx of material. And then there has to be a proper system of transparency wherein this deposit is redeemed, and there are no leakages of deposit. There are no fraudulent activities wherein the deposit are stolen in some sense. So that's the reason why we call it as an ecosystem, which takes time in implementation. You cannot implement deposit system which is well functioning overnight. And that's what is also evident from this table. Mandate enacted is something the year when the government decides to implement the deposit system, and the implement when actually it is rolled out. Now you can see, barring few exception in the beginning, typically such system takes anywhere between 12 to 28 months from the date you mandate it or publicly announce it, from the day when you actually implement it. And this time is a justifiable time, considering the fact that you are establishing this system for a longer term horizon. And above all, you are implementing the system which is transparent, which is accountable, and which involves stakeholders. So that justifies the time taken. This graph also shows that number of deposit schemes implemented across the globe on a decadal basis. So in 2000 to 2009, we had 11 countries or geographies implementing DRS. So what you see now from this graph is, in the current decade, the number of schemes which are implemented is almost close to what was done in last 3 decades. So this is also evident from the fact that DRS is getting traction. Problem is also becoming enormous scale. Therefore, DRS is getting the required importance, and the rest is history. And now it is, I think, 2 more geographies have announced. So close to 22 DRS system will be implemented in this decade. So the next decade, I believe Africa and Asia are going to be leading it. So we can get anywhere between 25 to 30 schemes rolled out in next decade. But let's see how it goes. Now DRS in practice, let me see the time. Okay, I'll take another 15 minutes to finish, and then we will spend like 20-25 minutes to go with the questions. Now let me give you a brief idea how the system works. What I mentioned that, early part of early 90s or late 80s, the DRS system which we had was more of an informal system. But what has changed since then at a global level? This system has converged into a full-fledged ecosystem, which is based on the transparency, which is flexible, and where there is a high level of accountability of stakeholders involved in it. This is one of the most common model of DRS system across the world. We also call it as a centralized model or a Scandinavian model, because these kind of models actually originated in Scandinavia, like Norway, Sweden, and Finland. And they are the most successful one. Not that the other ones are not successful, but they are easy to implement and easy to monitor. So what you need to understand here is, For example, a retailer goes to the producer, he buys the beverage containers, he pays the deposit on a per container basis to the producer. Producer transfers the deposit to a centralized organization, and I will come to that in a bit, which is an agency which operates the entire system. Retailer sells it to the consumer, which is like you and me. Same principle. We buy for the container and then we pay the deposit amount over and above. After consumption, we can go back to the same retailer or some other retailer, or you have something known as automated collection system wherein the reverse vending machines are installed at a strategic location. You give back your container and you get back your deposit. Now, what happens after that? Once the container is received by the retailer, let's say the shop Y in this case, once he has collected back, he sends the information to the central organization, which is deposit operator organization. The deposit operator organization initiates the logistic system once a fixed number of containers have been received by the retailer, because you would, from the efficiency point of view, you will not send a truck to collect only 10 bottles. So all these systems are established well in advance. So once the required number of bottles are attained at the shopkeeper level, then the logistic systems is kicked in. The logistic fellow comes, collects it and brings it back to the central organization. Central organization verifies, validates the number of containers collected. It refunds the deposit amount to the retailer, and on top of it, it gives something what is known as handling fee to the retailer in order to compensate the effort made by the retailer by acting as a collection point for this system. So there is an incentive for the retailer, and it's not just that they are doing it for free. Now, once the material which gets collected at the central organization, if your DRS is collecting multiple packaging type, for example, PET, glass, metal cans, HDB or Tetra Pak, then this entire material gets sorted, again counted and sold to the recycler for further processing, and then recycler can send it for the other application, be it downcycling in Indian context or perhaps in European context, it is sold as a recycled, I would say, material back to the producer to fulfill their recycled content requirement. So by and large, the entire ecosystem, the most important element is central organization, which is typically a not-for-profit organization, which enables the implementation of system by tracking the movement of the deposit, movement of the material, availability, facilitating the availability of the data, as in what was put to the market, what has been received back into the system. And this data is basically used by the policymakers for decision making. Because if a producer says that I have put 100,000 bottles in the market, then the central organization will provide that this brand, X number of bottles of this brand has returned back. So that will basically calculate the collection rate. And basis this, the EPR fee can be decided for the producer. So this is a very dynamic system. If the collection rate of your packaging goes down, obviously the EPR fee for you will be on the higher side. So that's where this system also brings in the transparency, so that the organization whose collection rates are higher should pay less, and the organization whose collection rate is lower, when I say organization, I mean brands, be it Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Nestle, Unilever. So it is a very market-based and a very efficient system, as opposed to other systems wherein the entire cost is averaged out and there is a fixed cost which is paid by the each producer or the brand owner. Then what happens is, in those kind of system, there is no initiative for anybody to improve upon, because all are paying equally, as opposed to this system wherein your collection rate will decide what is the EPR fee applicable to you. And this is where what you see, this producer and the administration fee per unit. This is the function which depends on your collection rate. And in the case of Norway, it is such that because of the metal can recycling and the collection rate is highest, their EPR fee is negative. That means for every unit of material which they collect, basically they are paid by the central organization. So that is a level of efficiency or market dynamics which governs this system implementation. There are other models also. German models is a decentralized model wherein you do not have a centralized operator, and directly the producers deals with the retailers and ensure collection system. This is of course one of the best performing system in terms of 88 to 89%, but it is slightly complicated compared to the centralized organization. And in terms of transparency also, there is a bigger question mark on this system compared to the centralized one. So from a Tomra side point of view, I mean, we do not per se advocate any specific system, but given a chance, considering the complexity of the country, the demographic profile, the other waste management challenges, we would rather recommend to go with the centralized organization model or Scandinavian model. And later on, if you feel that there is a further scope of efficiency, we can always look at a modification or get into a little bit more complicated. Then there's a third version also, which is the New South Wales Australian model. There, what they have done is they have bring in another agency, which is known as network operator. You have a centralized DRS operator and there is a network operator. The differentiation between the Scandinavian model and the New South Wales model is the network operator is given the responsibility of managing the collection points, and they are separated from the DRS operator, who basically only plays the role of supervision and the governance. The reason why this model has been experimented, because in most of the cases, DRS operator being not for profit in nature, they have a governance body coming from the representative of retailers and the producers. At times we have seen that the lower collection rate is good for them. Reason being, the higher collection means higher logistic fees, higher handling fee and everything. So to minimize their cost, they are always looking for the lower collection rate, unless this gets closed by some kind of taxes which comes on them in case the collection rate goes beyond level. So basically, the network operate model only brings in the more efficiency and accountability in ensuring the efficient logistics for collecting the return beverage containers. This is, as we mentioned, the most, I would say, prominent model. The centralized organization is the player in any kind of DRS, because how efficiently they work will actually dictate the success of the system. So they play the role of deposit management, data management, deposit clearing, reporting, marketing of the collected matter, entire operations of the logistic, and obviously ensuring that people understand the deposit system, its benefit, creating awareness amongst them. So this is the central heart of the system, which is the vital organ for this entire DRS implementation. This is a typical cost economics of any DRS. Maybe I can show you the other one. This is much better to understand. So for any deposit refund system, typically you have these four cost elements. You have a marketing cost. Marketing cost basically includes doing the contracts with the collection network. It could be a retailer, a wholesaler, or a supermarket, hypermarket, or even putting up a reverse logistics system. And then also it includes the cost of creating the awareness amongst the people about the system, that why you should participate in this system, what happens to your beverage containers when it is returned back, because these kind of information creates the support for system success. Because if the consumer is not engaged, then no system can be successful, and that's where consumer awareness is an integral component of the DRS design. Then obviously you have the admin cost. the cost of the DRS operator, because they are the one who manages the entire data movement of deposit, that is admin cost. Then you have something like logistic cost. This basically covers the reverse logistic, wherein the used beverage containers are bought back from all the collection networks to the centralized organization or the centralized processing unit. And last but not the least is the handling fee, which basically you pay to all these collection points, be it retailer, wholesalers, and anyone else. So if I talk about average distribution of this cost, 15% is marketing and admin cost, 30% is logistic cost, and remaining 40% is the handling cost. Of course, it does vary from geography to geography. That's why I'm saying this is an average cost. And how does this system gets compensated? One of the big component or the source of revenue of this system is the collected clean material. Now, this material, as I mentioned, is by far clean material in terms of quality. So it also fetches higher premium from the recyclers because it is clean, not contaminated, does not require any kind of processing. So close to 15 to 18% of the cost is offsetted by sales of the material, but it does vary depending on what is the market price, especially for the PET, which is a function of oil prices. Then a big chunk of money or a big chunk of cost also gets offsetted by unredeemed deposit. Unredeemed deposit is those deposit wherein the container has not been brought back to the system. It has been littered, it has been damaged, it has been taken outside the boundary of the DRS or something like that. So that money stays with this network or the DRS operator. Okay, so that basically also offsets the system's cost, and whatever is left over is passed on to the producer as an EPR fee. Now, this EPR fee, as I mentioned, could be eco-modulated, which is the case in Norway, wherein the fee is a function of the collection rate of the packaging you are putting to the market. And in some countries or geographies, it is equally distributed. But as a good practice, as a practice to create an incentive for producer to improve, the eco-modulation is always recommended. Now, what you see in the right is basically the representation of this cost for Norwegian deposit refund system. Norway is a population of 5.5 million, and they put a close to 1.2 billion containers in the market per year. And their collection rate, this is 2019-20, which is 89.4, and the latest one is 92%. So what you see in this graph, the black basically reflects the cost part of the system, and the green basically reflects the revenue part of the system. So as I mentioned, the handling fee is the largest component of any deposit return system, then your logistics, then other production and administration costs. And here you see of the total cost, or nearly 50% is offsetted by unredeemed deposit, then the sales of the material, and only 8% of the cost is actually passed on to the producer as a EPR fee. Now, this facts actually proves a lot of misconception about the deposit system, that it is one of the most expensive EPR system in the world. That's the misconception. So this clearly shows, if properly implemented, the system itself has a lot of revenue sources which can take care of the big cost, and whatever is left over is passed on to the producer. So essential elements, this is very important, and I will close in another 2-3 minutes. This is basically the collection rate of various deposit return schemes in the world. So you can see not all deposit return schemes are as efficient as what you see on the left side. The green ones are high performing ones, and the red ones are the low performing ones. So that means there are certain differentiating factors which decides the system designs and the system performance. And that's where the essential elements of the DRS comes into the play. So what Tomra did in, because we have been involved in system designs from last, I would say, 5 decades. So based on our experience, we have come up with the white paper on deposit refund system, the best practices and the essential elements. So we have defined that if these 4 principles uh, are taken into account in designing the deposit refund system, the probability or the chances of it being a high performing DRS will tremendously increase. And these 4 principles are performance, convenience. Here I'm talking about convenience to the consumer. Producer responsibility, that the producer should be involved in the system design. They should be part of the governance body. They should be the one who should be bearing the EPR fee. And last but not the least, this system needs to have integrity measures in place so that the fraudulent activities do not take away all the benefits which this system can offer. So these are the 4 principles which should be taken into account into DRS design. And that's not, we have also gone into detail under each principle what needs to be done when you are designing the DRS system. So performance has 3 sub elements. Producer responsibility also has a 3 sub elements. So these 4 principle has in total 12 sub elements which needs to be considered when you are designing the system. And that's where my department basically engaged with policy makers across the world and create knowledge and awareness on these sub elements when an organization or a country decides to implement the DRS. Now, one thing which I would like to caution here, that these 12 elements are not a menu card that you can decide and pick and choose. Let me take 2, 7, 9, 5, or 11. No, these are essential elements which the deposit refund system should consider in designing. Of course, the manifestation would vary from country to country, depending on your socio-economic condition, depending on your demographic factors, depending on your existing waste management system, value chain, and complexity. So that's where the bespoke models are more important. And by the way, I forgot to mention in the beginning, currently there are 40 DRS schemes running across the world, and there are no 2 schemes which are identical. So you can see that there are 40 types of DRS existing. So that also supports the fact that the system is extremely flexible. But yes, in designing that, if you have taken into account these essential elements, then the design will be more robust and it will be a high performing system for you. So there is a white paper which is available on the Tomra website. I can also put the link on the chat box. If some of you have evinced the interest in it, can download it and go through it, and I can be approached in case if you have any query. It has a lot of examples, case studies, graphs, and data to support what goes into these 12 elements. DRS as a business case. I'll just cover this one slide and then the rest all is a self-description. These are the 5 biggest advantage of DRS. We have seen through empirical studies, whenever the DRS has been implemented, it basically reduces the overall waste management cost from the municipality. There is again a big argument against the DRS that we are removing the recyclable material from municipal waste, which basically reduces the revenue for the municipality because it does compensates to some degree the waste management cost. That is right. Definitely, this recycled material goes out of their reach. But the empirical studies have also highlighted that kind of savings it brings at an ecosystem level is far more than the loss of revenue from the recyclable material. Now, what I mean by that is, first of all, this material, let's say if we're talking about the PET, it is light in nature, but it occupies the space. So you have more space to collect higher weight of material because this material is not there. So the number of trips for collecting the waste from these bins to a landfill or incinerator also goes down. Then the littering cost, which also is a significant cost for the municipalities. There was a survey undertaken by Eunomia, which is a UK-based think tank. It says that on an average for municipalities, 25 to 35% of the cost goes in dealing with littering. Now, littering, especially with these kind of material, and of course in Indian context, flexible packaging is also a big problem. If your littering cost reduction is also taken into account, on an overall basis, there is a reduction in the cost of the ecosystem, even if we take into account the loss of revenue from the packaging or recyclable material. Then these separate collection system creates additional jobs over and above the existing people involved in the waste management. And there are a lot of empirical studies which shows that anywhere between 500 to 800 additional jobs are created. And the reason for that is because now you have more specific material entering into each stage of the system. When I say each stage, more material is getting collected through separate, more logistics for transporting that material, more people required for processing the higher material coming in. So this higher waste quantity coming in one cycle creates more jobs, and these jobs are more skill based. They are decent jobs compared to what you see in Indian scenario, wherein you have the informal sector which no skill sets, and then you have all kind of human rights violations with them. So in that sense, there are decent job creation and there's an additional job over and above. So subsequent slides basically shows you the number, which I'm not going to detail at this point. Then obviously there is an increase in the collection rate. As I mentioned in earlier slide, that compared to bring back system, drop-offs, or maybe door-to-door collection, the collection rate is much higher. So higher material, higher recycling, less littering. And last but not the least, the clean collected material. There is a clean feedstock available, which can propel the circular economy, which can promote the bottle-to-bottle recycling and can transition the entire country towards circular economy. So these are some of the benefits which DRS gives in, which makes the business case. These subsequent slides basically gives you the number. These are all empirical studies with data to support, and these are not just rhetorics. You can see the job creations. This is the collection. Maybe I can spend a minute here. What you see is the blue color is the collection rate. What you see in the light blue is basically the deposit amount. Lithuania is a classical example. In 2017, when the scheme was rolled out, their PET collection rate was 34%. And after DRS, within a span of 2 years, it reached 92%. Wherein country like UK and France, wherein there is no deposit system and now they are contemplating to implement it, you can clearly see the marked difference of collection rate between DRS and without DRS. This one is also on the lower side, but I did mention that there are essential elements which needs to be taken into account. If you miss on any of those, then you will see a compromised collection rate. This is again the empirical study showing the reduction in the litter as a result of DRS implementation. This is something which I have put forward specifically in the Indian context, how it can make a difference. In India, close to 100,000 kiloton of PET is consumed, and there is a claimed rate of 90 to 92% of PET recycling. I do not agree to this figure because it is very difficult for us to assume that whatever PET bottle we see littered is only coming from remaining 8 to 10%. So there is a lot of, I would say, data gaps. And I think this is something wherein brands have connived together over the period of few decades to create a sense that there is a high collection and recycling rate. And by the way, if you look from the European context, for them, the recycling rate is actual material which is going into the next product. They do not account for any processes loss in between. In Indian context, whatever material reaches to the recycler is assumed as recycled. that itself is a wrong connotation. And now European Union is coming up with the guidelines that how to calculate the recycling rate. So I do not agree with this figure, but in any case, if PET is consumed to this extent, and if we are able to collect 90% of this material in a more transparent and accountable manner, then we have a very huge market for high-end products. Now ministry has also allowed the recycled content in the packaging. Of course, it is contingent with the standards put by FSSI, which will eventually happen. Then there's going to be a huge market for recycled content in the PET bottle. Until the time it doesn't happen, you already have a very big global market where there exists permission to use the recycled content in food grade, and where there are already tangible targets given by the government for the recycled content. To give you example, European Union, Australia, and US. In California, they have kept 50% by 2030. So there exists a huge market for this clean material, and it can become a big export business for India. On the contrary, what is happening is this entire PET which is getting collected is being downcycled. It is going to the application like textile fibers, benches, and dustbin. This is a sheer wastage of a resource which can be recycled to a very great extent. So that's where we philosophically clearly distinguish between what is a clean loop recycling and what is a downcycle application. And for us to increase that 2% to 30%, we want each and every PET bottle getting recycled back into high-end application. So that's what is my discussion all about. My sincere apologies if you feel that I went way too fast, but yeah, in the interest of time, I think this is what I have to cover today, and now we can open the discussion. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Santoshi.
Dear participants, if you are having any queries, please ask. Because Mr. Ahuja has from the beginning asked us to have a discussion session or question answer session. So regarding this deposit refund system, regarding any policy.
Sometimes no question means either they have understood everything or they have not understood anything. But
that is, so we usually.
Sir, good morning.
Yes.
Yes, please.
I have a few just a note. You have mentioned about this Scandinavian model and many other models. It's a very interesting talk actually. So how can we Indianize these models to our continent, like sorry, to India? And we know that the ministry is working strongly on this. We don't have an awareness, like you have mentioned about the main problem is plastic, the recycling in India. So how can we Indianize this so that it is going to benefit the entire population of India?
Yeah. Thank you so much for this question. And I think this is what is the key role which I am supposed to play for TOMRA. And in last 2.5 years since I have taken up this role, I will say that we have made quite a bit of headway in that. Obviously, COVID has kind of derailed our plans. But fact of the matter is now there is a lot of awareness on this subject, especially amongst the policymakers. And I would say one of the biggest achievement for TOMRA here is in their recent draft notification, DRS is a recommended tool by Ministry of Environment and Forest. So that clearly shows that there is a merit and policymakers have considered, otherwise they wouldn't have recommended in their EPR notification. Now coming to your specific question for DRS model for India. Yes, I fully agree that this model will be very much different from what you see in the Scandinavia or US or a German model. Primarily for one reason, because in those countries you do not have informal sector as such involved in the process. And obviously our collection rates for those PET bottles is slightly higher than what they have, because informal sector, based on my experience and engagement with them, is a highly efficient sector in terms of collection. But yes, they are not quality oriented, and of course you have a lot of anomalies associated with human rights violation with them. What we are looking at a model for DRS in India is wherein we can sort of engage this informal network player as a collection source for these PET bottles. Today also they are collecting, but then they are collecting and selling it to kabadiwalas and aggregators, and wherein they are being paid on a per kg basis. Okay, and this per kg also is a function of the recycling rate, which in turn is a function of oil prices or the virgin material. So these informal sector players are basically compensated for the material value and not for the efforts they are making. Okay, this is where the real problem lies, and we would like to address it through deposit system, wherein if I talk about European model, it is the truck who goes on a fixed frequency and collects the material from these shops, retailers and everything. In Indian context, we might not require those kind of logistic service as which can be fed through informal sector. So they can become a formalized logistic provider in the deposit refund system, wherein they can be given app-based phones, wherein they can go to the retailers, they can collect the material, and they bring it to the centralized facility. So when they bring back, what we will do is, what we are thinking to do is, we will be giving them the handling fee or the logistic fee on a per container basis, which basically reflects the effort they are making, and it is independent of material price. In addition, if in the area which has been allocated to them, suppose they have been given, let's say, sector 29 of Gurgaon, what we are looking at a Uber model, wherein, you know, whenever retailer requires a pickup, he logs on to the app, and the nearest informal network who is registered with the DRS will be given the information, and he goes and collects from it and delivers to the collection point. Now, while coming from the retailer shop to the collection point, if he finds any littered packaging on which the deposit has been paid, then this informal sector player will get that deposit on top of the handling fee for that container which is delivering. So we did some kind of mathematical modeling, and I can give you an idea on that. Again, it has not been casted in stone. Typically, an informal network player gets somewhere around 12 to 15 rupees for 1 kg of PET bottle which he delivers to kabadiwala or aggregator. Okay, and you get somewhere around 30 to 35 bottles in that. So for 30-35 bottles, he gets 15 rupees. Now imagine a scenario in deposit system wherein we have, let's say, kept 2 rupees as a deposit per bottle, and then we give a 50 paisa as a handling fee. So if he is bringing same 30 bottle to the collection, right, he is getting 15 rupees for the handling fee based on 50 paisa per, and in case he has got 5, 10 or 20 bottles which he has collected which were littered, then he will be paid as 2 rupees per bottle. So suppose he has got 10 bottles which he found out of littered material and 20 bottles which he has collected from the retailer. So 10 rupees he will get the handling from the retailer bottles, and 40 rupees he will get from the one which he has collected from the littering source. So in total, he will be getting somewhere around 60 rupees as compared to 15 rupees what he is getting now. And on top of it, since he is registered with the DRS, he will get all kind of EF and PFS, all kind of social security benefits, which will give him a decent network. So there are challenges from an India point of view, and we have reached to a very advanced stage to formally get it incorporated. So I am hopeful that in next, I would say 1 to 2 years, because these things also have a bearing from a political implications also. If all goes well, we will have a very robust, traceable, transparent and accountable model for India, which will deliver a collection rate of 85 to 90%, which is verifiable. Again, I'm putting it inverted commas. I do not agree to those 92%, which is verifiable, which promotes the social inclusion, which compensates the informal sector for the effort and not for the material value. And of course, it has a business sense for all the reasons which I have given in my slides.
Thank you, sir. Is it for only PET as of now?
No, we are targeting for all kind of beverage packaging, including Tetra Pak also. Now, the issue here is because the government is considering PET or plastic packaging as a bigger problem than other packaging. Our argument is if we have a deposit only for one kind of packaging, then there will be a tendency for the producer to switch on to the other packaging which is without deposit. So that is not a solution. That is only creating a market distortion or advantage to a particular type of packaging. Therefore, we are recommending government that for a particular beverage segment, go for all kind of packaging so that there is no tendency for the producer for moving or shifting from one packaging to other. And at the same time, there is no confusion for the consumer to remember, okay, if I go for can, I pay deposit. If I go for PET, I don't pay. So let me go for PET. So that's why we are recommending all kind of packaging to be covered under the deposit.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
So there are few other questions.
Yeah.
From Neeraj Singh, he has written in chat box.
Okay.
How this DRS mechanism system will be implemented when the recollection cost is very less.
When the recollection cost is very less.
Yes.
Okay.
For particularly household to collect waste material.
Okay. Now you need to understand because if you are paying 10 rupees to the informal sector on a 1 month basis, you are making a lot of assumption here that everything is working in a honky-dory manner. Everything is perfect, efficient system. That is not the case. Okay. What you are not seeing is that you might be paying 10 or 20 or maybe at max 50 rupees on a monthly basis, and you feel that you have done your responsibility. But the larger problem, the littering, the landfills, who is bearing all these costs? Because these systems are not efficient. You are only talking about what you have done, but you don't know what others have not done. The biggest problem, is littering is a very big problem in Indian context. We are literally starving of landfill spaces. And more on the top of it, all the existing landfills, and I would say 95% of them are unlined landfills. They are causing massive environmental pollution. We don't even know the scale and the scalability of that. So whatever cost you are seeing is actually not a reflection of true waste management cost. Okay. So when you need to see the cost, you need to also see the cost in the context of whether this is a true reflection of the cost. Is the waste being managed end to end? Is it being recycled? Is it being taken in the best possible manner? So if you look at the full cost accounting of the waste management, you will see that this number which you are paying or which somebody else is offering is hardly covering the overall cost. Still the major chunk of the cost is being burning the environment or is being borne by the environment. A major chunk is being borne by the municipality. So it is not a true reflection on what you are saying, that it is a very cheaper collection cost which is there. Maybe I'll give you one more example. I happened to attend one e-auction of EPR by one big brand, and I will not name it from the confidentiality point of view. There was a study undertaken by, I think, Center for Science or Environment or somewhere else. They did a full value cost accounting for flexible packaging right from generation all the way to disposal. And it came around anywhere between 18 rupees to 25 rupees per kg. If everything is done in a best possible manner, you will end up spending, let's say, 20 rupees per kg, okay, in efficient manner. Now, in this e-auction, this particular brand has to fulfill its EPR obligation. So they have decided that, we need to collect 1,000 tons from west part of India, 500 tons from east part of India. And then they have given the higher rates or the rates for each kind of packaging collection. And you need to auction or you need to bid for taking that contract. The lower your rate, obviously, you have a chances of getting that contract to do the collection on the behalf of this big brand. With empirical study in place that flexible packaging costs you anywhere between 18 to 20 rupees per kg, this brand has kept 3 rupees 75 paisa as a ceiling for multi-layer packaging. Okay. First of all, this brand itself has put 1/5 of the cost, which is the actual true cost of waste management. And can you guess who won the contract? I mean, I will not say who won the what, at what price the contract was won. 75 paisa per kg. Something which costs 20 rupees per kg, there is an agency who's ready to give you at 0.75 paisa per kg. This tells you the full story of what is the true cost waste management is happening in Indian context. So let's be very careful in saying that the cheaper costing is already existing. Why should we go for the other one? You need to talk in terms of performance deliverables and not just purely the numbers on the paper.
Yes, sir. Sir, another question is from Ujwala P.
Yeah.
What kind of contribution academic institutes can make to implement such kind of models in India?
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. And this is, why I engage with such kind of sessions, because, before anything gets implemented, there has to have a wider sense of understanding of the concept. Okay. Because the biggest issue with deposit has been in the past is that, people tend to create their own understanding of the system's implementation, the cost, the complexity, just by scratching on the surface. They don't get into the understanding that what is the intrinsic benefit of this system and how this system can work on a longer term horizon. So this is where I see a transformational role which academics can play in. Okay, they can understand the nitty-gritty of this system implementation through case studies which are existing in the domain. They can look at the existing waste management practice in India and they can perhaps come up with some kind of models which takes into account the Indian situation, which takes into account the intrinsic benefit of the system, and then marry both together to arrive at a model which is workable in Indian context. Perhaps the work which I am doing. But since I am seeing more as a private sector initiative. If academics do an objective and independent assessment of it, they can create much more, I would say, the value creation than a private company is doing, because we will always be seen with some kind of skepticism that we might be doing because it ends up selling my technology. That's not the case, but yes, you can't stop people from thinking. So this is where academics can bring in, and they can create a massive awareness on this subject amongst the people. And if everybody starts talking about it, I can tell you policymakers and the value chain players will be forced to evaluate this system, and this may become a reality for India.
Yes, sir. That's very true.
Okay.
Yes, participants, if you are having any further queries, you need some clarification, then you can write in chat box, as well as you can directly ask your question.
Let me see also in chat boxes if anything is mentioned. Okay, Neeraj one I have covered. Okay, I don't see any other question there, so I'm assuming all clear.
Yes, we have to assume so.
Anyways, maybe in chat box, I will just give me a second. Let me put the link for the white
Yes,
paper
sir.
in case some of you are interested.
That will be helpful.
You can always download it.
And your
Yes, please.
PPT I have shared with everyone, so there all the informations are there. If any further
Absolutely.
clarification they need, so they can write you an email or they can contact you.
Yes,
They can directly talk to directly by mail communication with Lovish Ahuja, sir.
yeah,
Thank you, sir.
I'm
Thanks a
also
lot.
putting my email ID in case if
Yes, yes.
anybody is having any query, you can always reach out to me. It's indeed a pleasure and honor for me to engage with you all.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a
Okay.
lot, sir, for sparing your valuable time. And it's a very good presentation and slides are very nice. It is very much informative and you are representing our nation as well as the globe at a instant and giving all information to the participants, which is quite I was also listening and I was also part. This time only I was part of your presentation. Otherwise, previously I was not feeling that much good, so I couldn't attend. So this is my pleasure that I I could able to hear, and it's a very good because Dr. Irfan has also given a very good feedback regarding you. So I thought ki why not our participants should also get the same opportunity where the person of socially responsible should deliver his lecture and give some information to the society, to the faculties, which will directly, indirectly will helpful to the young generation student fraternity who are the future of the nation. So it's our pleasure to be with you, sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We will keep in touch and I
Absolutely.
will call you Monday. I may disturb you
No, no,
because today also I am on leave. I have not gone to office. So
no,
Monday I will call you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
not a problem.
Thanks.
And warm wishes to all of you once again. And please stay safe.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Santoshi, for coordinating all the things. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So next session will be at 12.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Dear participants, please join at 12 noon.
Thank you.